get started. I'm Gary Thompson. My day job is a professor in the hotel school at Cornell University. This is my part-time job. I've been working on this software for 7 or 8 years. I've sort of lost track. Been selling it on the internet since 1999, and it's used in 9 or 10 schools right now. What it's designed to do is build a course schedule, and we're going to see a little bit more of this in a few minutes. It's been running for 51 minutes. This is the auto scheduler, and it's generated almost 400,000 different schedules, looking at different ways you can figure out what rooms should courses be taught in, what time should they be taught, and if you wish, it'll figure out who should teach them. And anybody in here actually does manual scheduling? People typically spend much longer than that to get one schedule. And so what I'm going to show you is the information that's behind it, at least some of the information, and then really show you how it can facilitate the process of developing a schedule. It's designed to deal with the three potentially competing areas of scheduling. And that is, you've got to satisfy students as best you possibly can, you've got to satisfy faculty as best you can, and you've got to live within any facility constraints that you have. Certain rooms have certain characteristics that don't exist in other rooms. And I'm going to show you each of those parts of the software where that information is represented. The handout that you have here, we're going to sort of follow the list of things that are on here. I'm only going to give you kind of an overview of the software because with the amount of time we have, I'd like to keep the presentation probably to 30 to 40 minutes and have time for questions. And you can actually have a stump the presenter because you can ask me, does it do X? And we'll see if you can identify anything that it does not do. And I'll make sure that I show you the reports that are in here, how you can manually edit the schedule, and then talk a little bit about how you can collect the data that drives this using the web. All right, let me pause this and we'll go back and look at some of the basic information that's in here. The data is set up in a hierarchy. So the level 1 data is basic building blocks, basic data components. So domains, scheduling domains, those could be areas of specialization or concentration, ways that you can organize students and faculty into categories. Faculty categories, you can do things like full-time, part-time, tenured, untenured, really whatever you want to do with that. Start times, you define all of the times at which courses could start in your particular school. And that's not to say that any one course could start at all of those times, but it's collectively the list of times that exist. Room attributes, another important basic component. You can identify the characteristics that exist in some room. So this is just a list of the characteristics that are relevant to you. This list is used in two places. One, when you go to an individual room, you can identify the characteristics that exist in that room. And then the second time is when you go to a course, you can say what characteristics does the course require, or which ones would it desire when it's matching up, when the software is matching up a course to a room. Before I go on to the main three components, I'm going to show you one other thing. This is from level 2. When I first started selling this software, I thought everybody was sort of like Cornell, where we had a real regular pattern. Like if a course meets at, in our school at 8:40 on Monday, well then it meets at 8:40 on Monday, on Wednesday, if it meets on Wednesday. So very regular pattern. I soon found out that there is no regularity. Some schools have regular patterns, other schools have irregular patterns. And one of the important things is sort of defining to the software, what does the schedule look like? You know, if you were to print out, how do courses meet? Which days of the week do they meet? So what I'm showing here is for courses that start at 8:40, there's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday pattern. So if you were to look at our schedule, you might see a Monday, Wednesday, Friday course starting at 8:40. You can see it a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, or you can see one day a week courses starting at 8:40. really this allows you as much or as little flexibility as you wish to define what works or what's appropriate in your particular school. This is sort of inflexible. If you want to get really flexible, you could say, you know, for a course that meets 2 days a week, just identify all those possible 2-day-a-week combinations, and then the software would consider those as valid. Now, there's obviously an override when we get to an individual course where you can, the default is to use these. You can use a subset, or you actually can define patterns that are applicable only to a specific course. So a lot of flexibility in here with regard to what should that schedule look like. Let me switch next to the facility structure. It's designed to be able to schedule on multiple campuses. And so if you're teaching at different campuses, it will factor in the travel time between campuses. It will also factor in the travel time between buildings. So if the software can't assign a course to its ideal building, it ensures that it's assigned nearby. I'm going to show you a particular room. This is our auditorium. And our auditorium is a fairly large room, seats 700 people. There's a possibility to put a minimum size course. So if we've got a room that seats 700, you don't want a class that has 10 students assigned to that room. The time between classes, typically in a law school environment, it's going to be relatively easy to turn over a class. You know, students exit, other ones come in. You perhaps need 5 minutes for that. If it's something like a laboratory, there might be setup and cleanup time, so you might need an hour between classes. Desirability is in there because not all rooms are equally nice. And they may have the same physical characteristics in the sense that they've got seats, they've got a projector, but some rooms are just better rooms to teach in than others. And what the software does then is that it makes sure that the more desirable rooms have larger classes and more classes, so that you get a better utilization of your more desirable space. For the attributes, I'm not showing anything here, but I can just, if I click that, I've got my list of all of the attributes, and so I can identify what exists in that room. Down below, I get the availability definition. Red means unavailable. And so for us, actually Cornell schedules some things in our auditorium. We've got to work around that, and that's why it's showing up as red. We've blocked it out and say nothing's going to get scheduled in that period. Gray here is an actual scheduled course. Just to show you that you can navigate through the software, I can double click that. Allows me to jump to the course and the faculty member pretty easily to navigate through the software. If I want to change the availability, for example, I'm just showing this for demo purposes. We typically don't offer courses on Saturday and Sunday. I could make that red time. And then it's probably not unique to our school, but students don't like to take classes on Friday, nor do faculty like to teach classes on Friday. So we can make that yellow time. And yellow says it's available, but only use it if you have to. So the difference between red, green, and yellow, green is ideal. Red is a hard constraint. The software is never going to schedule anything in there. Unless you're manually scheduling, you can override that. And then the yellow is sort of a soft constraint. It says don't use it unless you have to. And that idea of there's hard constraints, things that you have to do, and soft constraints, things that you should do, occurs pretty frequently throughout the software to allow you really to represent things that must be done and things you'd like to do if you could. Any questions on the room before I leave it? Yes?
Is there any way to, we have some rooms that they're small rooms that are on the outside of a large lecture room, so if the large lecture room is used for doing that, the small rooms can't be used. Is there any way to
In this version, no.
Yeah.
So that's number one on Stump the Presenter.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes?
Sometimes we have exams that are scheduled for certain classes and midterms that aren't scheduled during the normal class times
Right.
of the class itself. Is there a way to schedule that?
Yeah, there could be. You could schedule that as a. I haven't shown you the class yet, but when we get to class, you'll see that they could be any part of the semester or any part of the year, any duration. So it could be an additional class that meets at a certain time for a certain duration, say 1 day even.
Okay.
And it would schedule that. Cool. Yes?
In scheduling specific courses, how do you deal with conflicts that only somebody would know? Like, don't schedule Civ Pro 2C opposite Comlaw 1A.
Okay, can I show you that a little later? We'll
Please.
do that, but I'm going to, that's in a level 4.
Okay.
As it deals with issues across courses.
Right.
But that's an important capability,
Yeah, it sure is.
particularly for like 1Ls, where they're taking a block of classes together, and you've got to get a conflict-free schedule, or it's just not going to work.
I saw that with the attributes, you had certain audiovisual equipment available as part of the room. Is there a way to indicate that whoever's reserved the room would like that equipment, even though it's not part of the room?
I'll show you how you can handle things like that in a few minutes. Other questions? Okay, let me go on next to faculty members. And there's a lot of information in here on faculty. I'm going to not embarrass anybody else in my school. I'm just going to show you my preferences. I'll just highlight a few of the things that are in here. The maximum daily free time. That's in there to control situations where somebody might teach early in the day and then not again until late in the day. And if I've got 60 minutes in there for my parameter, that's really telling the software that I might like my classes close together. So when you add up the time that's free between them, you shouldn't have more than 60 minutes. Minimum overnight hours. If somebody teaches an evening class one day, how much time do they need available before they come in and teach the next day? Number of teaching days. The minimum and maximum are hard constraints. So typically in our school, people would be between a 2 and a 3 day schedule. And really, if you ask most faculty, they're going to say this. Any different in your schools? Right? People like to get paid but not teach. The minimum and maximum are hard constraints. The ideal is a soft constraint. So it's only going to do it if it possibly can. So in this case, it's actually going to ignore that. The person's going to be between a 2 and a 3 day schedule. So the ideal would only come into play if it happens to be within the range. Priority for schedule requests. There's handouts there if you want to get one. If anybody came in late and didn't get one, there are handouts. Priority for schedule requests is a thing that if, when I'm showing this, administrators often ask me to hide this because they don't like faculty to know that that parameter exists. And it's a way to weight people differentially. It's a multiplier, so if somebody gets a priority of 100, their requests are going to be treated as twice as important as somebody who gets a weight of 50. Now, in our school, I disagree with the associate dean, but he's the one that makes the decision. Everybody gets 50. Some of the users will link it to performance review. So if you get a good performance review, you're going to get a higher score, which to me probably makes the most sense because people are doing faculty are doing a variety of things, right? Teaching is one component of that. They're doing research, they're doing service activities. If somebody gets a good performance review, give them a schedule that will facilitate the other things that they're doing. Some places will do it based on seniority. Again, it's in there. You can choose to do with it what you wish. Up in the top right there, wishes regarding consecutive courses. This is relevant if a person is teaching more than one course in a day. It basically tells the software how do they want those sequenced, what's the timing that they would like. The indifferent, somebody said, you don't need the indifferent field because faculty are never indifferent about anything. But some of us are. These for demo purposes. The desire would say, I want my classes close together, preferably in the same room. The room option would say, put them close together, but only if they're in the same room. One that seems to be fairly common in law schools is to say, I don't like classes close together. Give me a minimum, say, of 60 minutes, and ideally give me 90 minutes between them. So again, the minimum would be a hard constraint there, the ideal would be a soft constraint. Try to do it if you possibly can. The possible course assignments, the software can be run in two ways. One is you can pre-specify who teaches every course, which is the way that most users of the software do it. You know, they know that for this particular class, they've got a person in mind to teach that. The software will pick the instructor if you let it, if you wish. You can say for a particular class, I've got 3 or 4 people who could teach it. It will pick based on their skill at those classes, their preference for those classes, how it fits into their workload. That's why workload fields are grayed out here, because we're pre-specifying in this case. And then how it fits into the student's schedule. So it considers a lot of things if you let the software pick. I'm not actually scheduled to teach anything because this is spring 06 that I'm showing you, and I'm on an administrative appointment, so I don't teach in the spring. If one of these classes that was listed was taught in the spring, it would show up here, as well as down below would show up as a scheduled activity. Availability is the same as we could define for the room. Right, I get to pick, excuse me, what should be green versus yellow. Now, when you look at all of that information, you say, well, why bother? That's time-consuming to collect all of that information. Is there any advantage in doing it? And the reason to collect it is people have complementary preferences. Not everybody wants the same thing. Some people like morning schedules. Some people like afternoon schedules. Some people like Monday, Wednesday. Some people like Tuesday, Thursday. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll through different faculty, and I'd like you to really kind of just focus on the color part at the bottom, just to see the differences in our school in what people's preferences are. So here's somebody who doesn't really matter. They prefer which day of the week, but they'd like to teach before 3 o'clock. Somebody likes Tuesday, Thursday between 10:30 and 3:30. Somebody that wants to avoid the middle of the day. Monday, Wednesday. I'll just go faster. So notice there's a lot of difference between individuals in terms of what they want. This tool is designed to take advantage of that, because there are a lot of different ways you can construct the schedule, and what you're doing is trying to find one that makes people more satisfied. So it's really only by asking for this information and then having a tool that can deal with it that you can raise the overall satisfaction.
Is there a way, either in this or in the course, we have a faculty member, everybody else teaches 50-minute classes, 75-minute classes, 2-hour classes. This person has to teach 60-minute classes.
You can do that when we get to the course. I'll show you that. As long as you're pre-assigning the person to the course.
Yeah.
Any other questions on faculty before I leave it? Before I leave them? Okay. All right, let's go next to courses. And let's pick one to show.
I got one question.
Yeah, please.
When you select those, what increments can you select those time blocks?
These time blocks here?
Yeah, the colored box. Are those in 15 minutes? 20
Oh,
minutes?
those are in 15 minutes, yeah. They can be set, that's just the default for the display, is to do it in 15-minute increments. Those time block can be what, there really is no set definition on those. So if your times, if your classes meet at different times, you could do that, with whatever times are appropriate to you.
Like I have those 15-minute time periods. So
Right, yeah, so.
Does it change the display when you change the time?
No, it'll still stay in hours, although you can change whether you want it in military time or how you
But you
want
can't
it.
change the increments of 15 minutes.
No, for these it's in 15 minutes. Any other questions on the faculty? Oh, sorry, we're on the courses. Lots of information, and I'm only going to be able to show you some of it that's in here in courses. Let's look first at the information about the attributes. You can match a course with a room in really 3 different ways. One is obviously if a room is not required, if it's like an independent study or something, where it's going to meet, but you don't need to worry about a room, do that. If you do it by attribute, you get a list of all of the attributes that you defined earlier, and you can say which ones are required and which ones are desired in the room. And you might say, well, what the heck's anthropological artifacts? You know, if you ask our students at Cornell, they say all of the courses have that because, right, the faculty that's not associated with the room, right? I don't know what it is. It's somewhere at Cornell, that's a characteristic that exists in some room. So that, for some classes, are relevant. So the R there says it's got to be have air conditioning, got to have at least 26 seats, desired to have those anthropological artifacts. So again, the require would be a hard constraint, desired a soft constraint. And you can, again, notice the difference here. We've got 60 people that we think are going to enroll, so this is like an estimated enrollment. And we might say, well, why would we have 26 seats? Actually, I probably wouldn't want that. Let's come in here and change that and put it perhaps something more realistic, 50 seats. And you might say, well, why do you have those two numbers? What the software is going to do is, in this case, make sure you have at least 50 seats in a room. Try to give you 60. Well, if it's part of a program of study that always fills, right, that's full every time you offer it, you can say it's got to have 60 seats. But what if this is a new class taught by a new professor? You don't really know how many it's going to draw. You'd like to be able to tell the software whether perhaps there's some flexibility with this one. And so that's where you can set the requirement, the hard constraint at below the estimated enrollment. Now when you're doing that, I don't want to say these changes, but if you do that, you might wonder, let me just navigate back to this. Have I, in fact, created a monster by specifying requirements that don't exist? I can do a little analysis. And it'll tell me, are there any rooms that meet those requirements? Now, it'll also tell you this when you try to run a schedule, but you can do an analysis. And so notice there's several rooms here that have the attributes that are necessary and kind of match exactly the capacity for the estimated enrollment, I should say. We can also define preferred rooms. So even though there were a number of candidates, remember room 198 was one of them that meets those requirements, I can put a preferred room in there as 198, and so that's the soft constraint. The software can have more choices from the top things, but it's going to try to put it in 198 if possible. So that's how you can satisfy people's preferences for specific rooms without making it such that it has to do it where there might not be a schedule that's possible. The valid meeting lengths, you can decide or tell the software how many days a week does the course meet. So this course right here is meeting for 2 days a week, 75 minutes each. We could also say that it meets for 3 times a week for, what is that, 50 minutes each, I guess. And we could even add something like meets once a week for 150 minutes. All of those having the same amount of meeting time. And how would the software pick? It's going to pick those based on what works for your facility, what's best for the instructor, and then what's best for the students. So you're given it more flexibility, and then we'll take advantage of that flexibility.
Excuse me.
Yes?
You don't have to have the same time period for different meetings, right? You could have 100 plus 50.
Yes, that's right. And actually, thanks for asking that. If I did 150, and I add that, notice that there's a little F beside that. That means the order is fixed. It means the 100 is first, followed by the 50. If I change that to a variable order, it'll pick whichever order makes sense. So there it's now variable, so it'll pick whichever goes, makes the most sense to come first, the 50 or the 100. This thing at the bottom here, the default is to use the globally defined days offered patterns. That's what I was showing you earlier. You know, say the 840 classes that start Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I can override all of that stuff that I had defined earlier and do things like if it meets 1 day a week, it's got to be a Thursday. If it meets 2 days a week, it's got to be Thursday and Friday. And 3 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, for example. And so, despite what I had defined earlier, this class is going to have to meet with these characteristics. So again, quite a bit of flexibility. So better to define the things up front because it saves you some work later on, but you've got a lot of flexibility if you've got a class that has some specific requirements on it. Down below, we've got the same availability definition that we had before. We can define things as red or yellow. We can also define which times are valid. So we have our list of all the start times, and we can say which of those apply to this particular course. You have to define this information for each section of each course. So if you've got your first year log broken up into 4 cohorts and contracts is taught 4 times, then each of those gets defined once. Because you might have different people teaching them, you might have different requirements on when they meet, how they interact with other courses that you're in your program. So each section gets defined separately. Any questions on the courses before I leave it and talk about how the courses relate to each other? Yes?
What's the group member checkbox for?
Group member, I'll show, that sort of relates to the level 4 data, but if I select that, it'll allow me to say, is it part of a particular program of study? Is it part of a group of classes that are joint listed, or cross-listed, have different numbers, but it's essentially the same course? Is it part of the same day group? Of course, it should be offered the same day. So basically, you can put it as a group member through that option. Yes?
Is there a way to import data? Like
Oh yeah, there's extensive import capabilities in the software. The faculty, all of that information can be entered online. So the faculty can go to the web, put in their preferences, and that just gets imported straight into the software. If you've got an existing electronic schedule, you can import most of the information that you need to make this happen. Generally, what you'll be missing is the faculty preferences. I haven't shown you students yet, but you can also let them specify their preferences online. Question?
It assigns the faculty member too.
It will if you wish, yeah. Let me just show you quickly how that would happen, at least how it looks. It'll look different. If I go to global parameters and go to my faculty specific, I'll say the auto scheduler should select the faculty. If I do that, now when I go back to a course, and let's put something here. All right, now notice it's not saying assigned faculty, it's assignable faculty. And there's an S and a P. The S represents his or her skill, the P represents his or her preference. We can specify the number required. So I can come in here and say, I've got 2 people that could teach that. Their skill and preferences may be different. I only need one of them the software would pick. So you can run it either way. Other questions on the courses? Yes.
When you consider the constraints in a faculty, like there are room constraints, there is clashes between different groups or start numbers.
Yeah, I'm going to show you that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to see that?
Yeah, because I want to know where, like, which one you give priority to.
Oh, okay, I'll show you that too. All right, let me show you next the level 4. Level 4 really is primarily about course interactions with each other. So one of the most important abilities, or one of the most important components in here is to define what we call program groups. And I'll just pick, this is our freshman, one of our freshman cohorts. One group of 16 students in our freshman freshman program takes these 4 courses. And notice that it's flagged on the right there, course time conflicts to prohibit conflicts. So when the schedule is built, those 4 courses will not conflict because students have to take them together in the same semester. If there was conflict, there wouldn't be a valid schedule. So it will create these groups automatically. So we have 170 students in our freshman core, and we have a number of courses that are of different sizes. So some of them have capacities of 18 students. Other ones will have capacity of 60 or more students. And all we need to do is basically flag that tell the software which courses belong in there, how many students it has to run through, and it'll create these groups automatically, factoring in the enrollments. And so if I scroll through the groups, the lectures will differ slightly in each of these groups in terms of which particular things are included. For each of those groups, we've got to prohibit conflict. So when the schedule's built, there's not going to be any conflict in that. So to answer your question about what's most important, this is one of the most important things in there. That's a hard constraint. It will never schedule with conflict if you say prohibit conflict. After that, the most important thing in the software is to schedule everything if possible. So it doesn't like to leave unscheduled courses. And then it's only after those things that are really satisfied, well, any other hard constraints, but that we get into the other criteria, and I'll show you in a few minutes.
Have you given any weightage for the preference of the faculty?
Yeah.
Like if they say, okay, I don't want to teach Friday afternoon, or on certain days I don't want to come and teach, I want to do research, then how do you handle that?
Well, that was the green versus yellow.
Okay.
And their individual priority through their priority. They don't get to tell the software which of their things are most important to them. They get basically to say, here's the things I would like, and then the software attempts to accommodate those. But it does not allow them to say, it's more important to me to teach on Monday and Wednesday than it is to have my courses close together. All right, on the program groups, again, that's a particularly useful capability. You can also define groups of classes, perhaps that you're not prohibiting conflict, but you'd like to avoid conflict. We do that for our junior core. We've got a lot of courses in the junior core. There's not enough time slots in the day to schedule those without conflict. So we just say spread them around as much as possible. So if we spread them around, that's going to increase student choice. And so you can create these program groups for concentrations, for specializations, where by spreading the courses around in time, you're increasing the students' ability to take classes in that concentration. So the other level 4 things, joint listed or cross-listed, if a course is listed with 2 different numbers, but it's the same course, you can put them in a group. Courses that have to meet in the same day, courses that have to meet on different days, courses that have to meet simultaneously, all the things that are relating one course to another. One last thing in the data that I'd like to show you is students. And what we've been doing for the past several years is polling our students. So typically the way universities do it is you build a course schedule, students sign up. Right? That's the way it's almost always done. What we actually do now is we put out a list of courses that we intend to offer, and then we ask the students, which ones do you want to take? And we let them allocate a certain number of points to that. So here's a person who wants to have 3 classes with different weights. Notice this student has a priority of 50. Here's a student that has 5 classes with equal weights. Here's a student with a priority of 70, with 5 classes with non-equal weights. Any guesses on how we assign priority? Quiz time. How do we assign priority? Pardon me? It could be on grade point, yeah. What do you give it to? Higher grade point average gets a higher priority, or the other way around?
You're the student.
You're the student, that's right. For us, graduate students, second-year graduate students have a higher priority than first-year graduate students. Seniors get a higher priority than juniors and so on. So that sort of makes sense. That, you know, the idea being that the closer they are to leaving us, the more happy that we would like them to be. So they think of us in the long run, right, with their checkbooks. We've actually had really good success with collecting preferences online. We used to build our schedule by what faculty thought. So for example, if I'm teaching a operations management class and a student comes to me and says, I really like to take your class, but it's offered at the same time as this marketing class. Well, I tell the person that's running the schedule in our school that put it in there that those 2 classes shouldn't conflict. The problem with that, though, I actually did a research paper on this, that was no better than just throwing all of that information away. That we thought we were doing a good job, but what faculty thought was not helping us at all. And the reason is, if I tell the scheduler that my class should conflict with another class, what that misses is all the people that were happy with the schedule the way it was, right? So you're getting bad information. And then there's also a lag effect, right, between if student preferences change slightly over time, there's a lag between when those preferences change and when faculty become aware of it. So by polling our students, we were able to give about 1 in 4 students an additional course that they wanted, just by juggling the schedule. And I'm kind of surprised that not too many of the users of the software have actually taken advantage of this capability in the software. All right, well, yeah, 2 questions, yes?
Do a lot of your students actually fill those out?
We get about 1/3 of them filling it out, yeah. I'd like it to be more. I'd be concerned if it was less. We actually tried to do the schedule this is spring '06. We've never done it so far in advance, and our response rate was significantly lower. And to me, that says it's unrealistic to ask them to project. It wasn't my decision, but because we had about half of the response rate that we typically have. They can do it 1 semester ahead, not so well a whole year out. Yes?
What about courses that aren't courses, lectures, special events? Do you use this?
We typically don't. What happens with this is that once the schedule is built, it's turned off to a room management, room booking system.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, so you don't use it for any of the
Generally
other
don't
kinds of
use it
stuff.
for room booking. There's a lot of
So
tools
how
that
do
are...
people look at a schedule and
I'll-
see this overlay the rest of the schedule?
I'll show you that. I'll get to reports, which is coming up in just a
Okay.
minute. Other questions? Okay, let me show you the auto scheduler. And I'm going to get this running again and then come back to the first interface you see on this. Let's resume it. When it first loads up, and I'll show you this, you get to tell the software which of the criteria that it can consider, which of those criteria are the most important. Now, when it's running, as I was saying earlier, it's run for 53 minutes, it's generated 410,000 schedules. The legend that we see is based on the priorities that I set, or the priorities in our school that we use. So for us, the most important criterion was course timing conflicts. We want to get a student-friendly schedule, so we want to minimize time conflicts from the student's perspective. For us, the next most important was the thing that I mentioned earlier, try to avoid Friday afternoons for faculty and students, so minimizing yellow time for courses gets rid of those as many of those Fridays as possible. Faculty teaching days is the yellow, so that's trying to give them their ideal number of teaching days. Green is faculty wishes for consecutive courses, and that's do they want their classes close together or with some time between them. The first schedule that it comes up with is scored at 100 for every measure. So for every criterion, it gets a score of 100 for that first schedule. For all of these criteria, lower is better. So the way to read this is that it's now generated 400, almost 20,000 schedules. It's been able to eliminate over 90% of the time conflicts that existed in that original schedule. So we have a schedule that's significantly better from the perspective of students than we had before. We've been able to eliminate about 90% of that conflict. You might say, yeah, that's great for students, but how are you doing for faculty? Well, if you look at the green and the yellow we've been able to improve by about 35%, and the green looks like about 8% there right now. So we've not only simultaneously made the students better off, we've made the faculty better off.
But can I tell you something? Like when you try to interpret the green and yellow line, it is like compromising when the conflict for students is reduced. You can see the yellow line is going in the opposite direction.
It
So
can. Initially it can, and so typically what people do is you set it up and you let it run overnight. And so if you let it run overnight, you might generate 1 million schedules, and it's able to find the ones that offer the best compromise. Now clearly, when you put a priority in here, I'm going to show you how we have weighted them. Your choice of priority affects your outcome, clearly. So if you say students are the most important, they're going to be perhaps more satisfied. That's not going to say faculty are worse, because it's able to do better for them. But they're not as good, perhaps, as if I said students don't matter and just drive faculty satisfaction. So I mean, you get there is no predefined value system in the software to say this criterion is more important than another. You have to pick that. And then given your choice of criteria and importance, it finds the one that best satisfies that. All right, let me interrupt this. And we can see some summary information as it's running. So there are some conflicts in here. Junior core. Remember, there was too many courses to be able to schedule without conflict. Some conflict in one of the other groups. There's no conflict for any group that I said prohibit. Unassigned courses. Interestingly, there's a course here that's still unassigned, unscheduled. So we've been running this about an hour. It hasn't been able to schedule this. So I'm going to investigate why that might have been. So I'm going to save this schedule. And then let's end the search. And here's the interface that you get to the scheduler. Here's where you get to set your relative priority. And so there's a lot of different criteria in there. For us, student-friendly schedule is the most important, and that's, what's up there. If I had changed that and said, well, that's important, but not the most important, that give faculty their ideal number of teaching days and give satisfy their desires for consecutive classes. If I save that, it will just reorder them then based on the new criteria importance. So that would probably generate a different schedule, because I'm saying that faculty are now the highest importance in there. All right, so that's the interface to the scheduler. You have to decide the importance of those criteria before you run it. Let's load the schedule in that I just saved.
I have a question on that.
Yeah, please ask.
You said it does a lot of iterations, and you said it's already generated about 200,000.
No, that was, what was it, 400,000?
Yeah, 400,000
in an hour.
schedule.
In an hour.
Yeah, so, but how do you know which one is the best out of the 400,000?
It has a way of evaluating those schedules based on your weighting, and it always keeps track of the best one. So it's got a built-in evaluation function based on the priorities that you had specified. So yeah, you don't have to go back through and look through all 400,000 or whatever it happens to be. All right, here's the schedule. I just loaded it. There's one class showing up as not having a time or room. I'm going to double-click that, and it gives me the choice of jumping to the course or analyzing it. So if I analyze it, it will tell me each of the time options for that course, and then tell me what constraints would have been violated at each of those time options. So option 1, it exceeded the maximum workload for Nick Dahl. So it looks like there's an issue with his workload. So there's no way that that course is going to be scheduled, because in each of the instances it's beyond what his allowable workload would allow us. So in reality, I probably want to fix that before I went ahead and ran a schedule overnight, because even running it overnight is not going to be able to get rid of that limitation.
Nick is a prima donna, or?
It could be.
Yeah.
Do you have any of those in your
Oh,
phone?
yeah. Yeah, I could think of some of those.
Let me go back here. Search this out. Okay, let me show you, now that we've run a schedule, let me show you a little bit about the reports that are in here. There's a whole ton of reports, and I'm just going to show you some of a select few. Some of the grid reports. Just because they're fast to generate. Okay, the first one is the faculty grid. It will show us what's happening for each faculty member at each day of the week. If you don't like the way the rows and columns are laid out for each of these reports, there's different versions. So notice the faculty grid, there's 2 versions that change which is in the row, what's in the column. Courses are color-coded by area. So for us, green is a marketing class, so you typically see people teaching the same color classes. Again, we color-code them so that when you look at the schedule, you get a real good overview of what it looks like. The course grid by room. Here's Mondays. At the times, and you might ask, well, why are those times in there? That's an option that I set back in the global parameters. Those are our main start times for our school. You can run those in the half hour, hour, 15 minutes, or you can base them on certain start times. And so you can kind of look and get the overview of what does that schedule look like. So it tells you each room what's going on in that schedule. Similar report that does not include the rooms, it's just the course grid. So this is a different layout. Notice the times are in the columns, but it's Monday at 8:40. We can look down and see all the things that are being offered. And we can include room information in that report as well, if you wish. Most of these reports, you can select which fields you want to include. And then there's a room grid that kind of shows us for each day of the week what's happening in each of the rooms. A ton of other reports in here. All of those can be exported to Excel as well. You can create customized reports if you want to do things with a certain format. You can set up the format for reports. If the software doesn't do it, you can write structured query language, queries on the underlying database, create your own query and export that to Excel. So it's really flexible with respect to reports.
Is there companion room booking software or
no, there is and there isn't. Yeah, we have one, but we don't sell it. So it's like
import themselves.
For
you want room booking.
If you have
with this, you would want room booking software.
Yeah, that's right. And, yeah, there are a number of vendors in that space, and there's some relatively inexpensive solutions. People use Outlook for room booking, for example. You cringed.
Well, I won't
No, I'm just. There are a lot of vendors in that space. This is not a space that we're in. There is a.
Something that you recommend that works with this?
Yeah, I can give you some offline, some recommendations. There is, under one of the export choices, you can export room events. So if you want to export a room event to some other system, you can do that. So lots of import and export capability. One last thing I'll show you before I entertain final questions. Once the auto scheduler's built it, you publicize the reports to faculty. They're going to come back in. It might be 95, 98% okay. There's still an issue of sometimes you have to make manual changes. And so I just want to show you that, and then I'll answer any questions. Pick something that I hope has some student preferences. All right, if I'm going to make a change to this schedule, I can go through a schedule analysis. It'll ask me, do I want to observe all the hard constraints on this? So that would be making sure that I don't double book faculty, don't double book a room, and I'll say no to this. I typically would say yes first. This gives you an idea of what happens if you try to reschedule things. It will tell you what constraints are violated, depending on which time you move it to. It will also tell you, we don't see examples on there, I just picked a course at random, but it'll also tell you for the students, what is the implication for those different times. So how many students couldn't take it in each of the times that were there. So it gives you a lot of information so that as you go through, it's hard to keep track of all of these things, which rules you wouldn't be violating. And the software gives you that information as you make manual changes. So that's in 50 minutes, a pretty quick overview of the software. Let me open up to general questions. Yes?
Yeah, these are general questions. First, how do you go about publishing class schedule and make it available to the public?
You can do it in a variety of ways. We do it to our faculty. We publish it first just through some of these web reports, the HTML reports. So we'll create those, send them out in an email. And that's worked really well for us because, if they see some issues there, they can see the schedule from the perspective of rooms, from the perspective of students, from their own perspective of other faculty. So if there is a problem, they can often make suggestions of, maybe if you move this class to there, you can fix this. So that's worked well. In terms of publishing it to students, in our school, we're uploading it to another system that they use for registration. And so there's an export in the software that we've created that will export to that system. So it has some different options on that.
Another question is about non-course events, like general events, administrative events.
You can put those in and you can treat them as if they're a course and schedule them with this software. If they're pre-scheduled, you can block out rooms at particular times. But really, this software is really not designed for room booking. Ideally, what you do is you build the schedule, and then you hand it off to a room maintenance system or room booking system that you're using for special events. What this software is really designed to do is build that course schedule, which often can take people a month of time trying to build a schedule that avoids conflicts and juggles all of those things, that focuses on that. And that's I will say, a much harder problem to deal with than room booking. And that's why I say that there's a number of solutions out there for room booking.
So this does not actually...
Does not do room booking, no. Yes?
What registration system are you using?
We're going to PeopleSoft. We've been using SIS.
You export that with no problem?
Yeah. What we have done is that if you can't create the export through the software, I'll create a custom interface for you on that. We've done that with our SIS export.
Has anyone used it with PeopleSoft?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
No.
So we don't know when PeopleSoft is going to come online for Cornell. So it's been in the works for a long time.
Let me share with you, it will take several years before it comes online.
Yeah, I know. It was the Project 2000 that was started back in 1990 or something like that. It's not live yet. So, any question?
Yeah, on manual changes, I suspect it's probably a room scheduling kind of thing, but again, it gets back to that makeup classes. When I've got to do makeup classes, then how do I know which are who's in ConLaw 2A but not in Civ Pro 2C?
Right.
And there are different numbers of students and different numbers of.
I mean, the
and
software.
how many conflicts are going to be there?
Since it's a handoff, you could actually take enrollments and bring them back into the software for that kind of thing.
That's what
and there is a capability in the software to say, let's run the auto scheduler with certain things locked in. So I can lock in almost everything that's scheduled and just have the
just say,
the makeups.
give me the makeup
right.
potential
Figure out
for
where to
these
place the
three people.
makeups.
Okay.
Yeah, it can do that. Yes.
Two things. One, how do you handle like holidays? Like we have to have like a certain number of hours, like class hour time in a semester, and so how do we know that?
From this in some ways that doesn't matter to this software because it's just basically figuring out a schedule for a week. It will tell you the number. There's a report that will tell you the number of contact hours, and that will factor in holidays. So that's something you define non-meeting days back in global parameters, and so it'll figure that out for you.
Can it handle an alternate, like if it meets Monday and Wednesday, and then an alternate, like on one week it meets on Tuesday, and the second week it doesn't meet on Tuesday?
No. You'd have to do that with two separate classes. There's a workaround, but no straightforward way to do that. How about some questions from this side of it? Yes?
Quick question. It seems fairly complicated. I know it solves a lot of problems. How do you migrate someone who's in the mindset of using the old posted paper card Excel spreadsheet way and move into this paradigm?
With a stick? What it really requires is that that the person who has done the scheduling basically says, I've had enough, and that there's got to be a better way to do this. It's really got to be driven by the person who does the scheduling. That's often associate deans, it seems. And Terry, can I ask you that? This is Terry Utter from Pepperdine. They've been using the software for a number of years. And
absolutely right. That was based on our associate dean because at the time she had it. She said no. But what happened is actually that went after her was been more like, but she's coming back in, thank goodness. So it's very for us associate dean driven.
Yeah, and I think that's generally the case. That you can make a pitch to people, and it's a relatively easy pitch to make. That from a faculty member's perspective, you're almost certainly going to do better with this than you would otherwise do, because it's able to look at so many alternatives. And it's not like, again, that faculty are the ones that are going to suffer. There's a lot of information in there on their preferences. And so it's really just making it clear to them what are the benefits. So the benefit really is that you get a better schedule from their perspective, but also better able to accommodate student preferences.
The fee schedule,
Yeah.
as far as upgrades, is that included?
That's all included, yeah. And I will say that since I started...
Indefinite duration is an indefinite upgrade.
Yeah, since I started selling it, it's gone through about 450 upgrades based on suggestions of users. They've been really invaluable, but the people that have been using it have been very helpful with suggestions, and it's evolved a lot. For a long while, I was averaging a new release every 4 days, but there's only a few anal users who would actually get the upgrade every 4 days. Typically, people would get the upgrade just before they start their scheduling cycle.
And the maintenance fee, 20% of what license fee?
Whatever license. If you're buying a one-year license, there's no maintenance fee. That's included. If you're buying an indefinite license, that's what buys you the upgrades, is the maintenance fee. It also gives you the hosting that we host the student and faculty preference forms.
So $5,600 would be like $1,200 a year or something.
Right, whatever 20% is.
Yeah.
Yes?
On faculty preferences, they can only set their yellow time, they can't set their red time.
Exactly right. That's a really good question. And actually, you might even not allow them to do that. And I will show you very quickly that you can decide which of those things you want to expose to faculty and which ones you do not want them to know. So if I go to the global parameters, web data options, basically you can choose which of those preference items to let them view and edit, or if you don't let them view it, they're not even going to know that exists in the software. So they won't even show up in the web interface. But yeah, definitely you don't let them set the red, because people could constrain it to such a degree that you wouldn't get a schedule. Typically the administrators will define what is red, and then faculty get to pick what's green or yellow. Yes?
We have a very weird schedule. Occasionally we have legislative days, that is to say, a Wednesday turns into a Friday.
Oh, yeah.
And Fridays for us, for religious reasons, cut off at 2 o'clock as opposed to going to 5. And what ultimately happens is, because of religious holidays, it takes us 16 weeks to end up with enough contact hours for a 14-week schedule.
Right.
Can this handle that?
I don't know. I'll have to think. We'll have to talk about that one. So you might have stumped the presenter here.
I have a question for the person from Pepperdine. How long, if I'm trying to convince someone to use this, or for me to use it, how long did it take you the first time you used it to get a schedule, and how long does it now take you?
It's very labor intensive in the beginning, I'll be honest with you, really.
Define labor intensive.
Well, of course, the time we did it, we didn't have nearly as much import, because we've been doing this for several years. And we basically typed all that stuff in.
Right, that's what we have to do.
So that was labor intensive in terms of just getting all the information in there. Now, it's not that bad at all, because I have new faculty, take out a faculty.
And some things change. So how
Change a room attribute, but I mean, getting that initial, how many days a week do you want everything? And Chris Gary's made a billion different changes. It's a lot easier now, too. There's things that, we can choose now that we couldn't before, the default now that we had to do before. But yeah, no, it definitely was. But in the long run, it's a huge time savings, because the maintenance is very quick. And you can sit there and go, okay, well, I don't like that schedule. Let's try a new one. The only thing that I found on my computer is I like to run it, like Gary said, overnight or at lunch, because it did suck up a lot of my processor,
Yeah, you don't want to run it when you're doing something else.
Yeah.
But Terry's experience is exactly the experience that people find. I'd say to them that you will not save any time the first time through. However you get the information in.
Will it be worse the first time?
No, it won't be worse. It'll be about the same.
Okay.
And so you really get the time savings in subsequent situations. We went from a situation where we had our undergraduate director spending a month every semester building our schedule to where we now typically do it in 2 to 3 days. And that's including the updating the information, getting it out, making any changes. So, and then even the first time, if it takes you the same time, you're getting the benefit of perhaps a million schedules. So, but don't expect time savings the first time through. The software has a distinct learning curve. It does so many things, but that's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's good that you can do it, but it takes some time to learn it.
Is it easier to get faculty buy-in using this than doing it manually?
Yeah, they really didn't care. It
As long as they got the concept one.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I noticed earlier you had the ability to, do the SQL query and stuff like that for reporting purposes. So I'm assuming you're using like MSDE or
Yeah.
something like that. Can you, I guess, kind of tying into a performance issue as far as running it overnight and stuff? Can you put the database on a database server? And
The database, the files right now are Access databases.
Okay.
After version 13, which will be due out probably in a month and a half, we're going to develop a higher performance database version.
Okay.
Hasn't been too much of an issue right now because most of the users, there's only 1 or 2 people interacting typically at a time, and so that can sit on a shared network drive without a problem. Sorry, you didn't hear what I just said.
So
That's on tape.
So with regards to like the automatic schedule and stuff, I mean, is that more
The automated schedule-
database? Is that more of is a bottleneck for the scheduler more of the application, or is it more
It is not a bottleneck with the database. It is the calculation intensive
Gotcha.
to do that.
All right.
Yes.
So, how do you know when it's time to call it quits? This is the best schedule.
It will tell you when it found the best one, and generally the longer you let it run, the better that it will do. It has an automatic restart capability that if it goes more than 10,000 schedules without getting improvement, it says, sorry, I'm not doing very well. It'll then generate a new schedule and start from that. So if you let it run overnight, it is going to do its best to try to find the best that it possibly can. These problems are very, very complex.
I think you have a better shot of winning Mega Million.
Pardon me?
And the more permutations than Mega Million, right?
Yeah, no, there is. I mean, it's a very complex problem, and the more you let it run, the better you'll do. We're out of time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them after we're finished. So, thank you.
Yeah, and the archive.
Of course. Oh, aren't you lucky?
Knocked out 5 days because it burned out. Because it burned out. We're the people that created the great East Coast.
Of course.
Power.
But we have like daily power outages just because we're the end of the universe.
So
I'm the last power pole on the entire East Coast.
So what I did was I said, well, we trenched our base and
Right.
deal with
Right.
and put in a sump and sump surface.
Yeah, their system, I think, is going to have more
If I ever want to get a generator, I should put in a cross switch. So I
drag and drop. There's so many conflicts. This does a lot of conflict. It's hard to run the annual schedule.
I rush out, get a generator, and we wait a few hours to make sure. I get it all hooked up, and I click on the switch.